Hello, welcome to Spotlight, blasting away the noise of TT with the calm of artistic loveliness.
Spotlight, brought to you by the Isle of Man Arts Council.
This evening, we continue our walk around the 37 3/4 exhibition at the House of Manannan with artist Rachel Clegg. Hear about a new poetry project, Dreich Planet, Isle of Man. And finish our chat with the big purple helmet himself, Derry Kissack, as his new book hits the shelves. Remember, do get in touch with any creative artistic endeavours you may be involved in, planning, hoping to create, or would really like to put in that spotlight, poetic, visual, theatrical, musical, all the rest of it. Just email me spotlight@manxradio.com or howardkane@manxradio.com. So, here we are, the second of our little TT specials, with a bit of poetry as well, so we don't lose touch with reality. So, let's race back to the House of Manannan to meet up with artist Rachel Clegg again, as we enjoyed a sneaky peek, she was still setting up when we spoke to her, of her exhibition 37 3/4.
Yeah.
And I like this one next door. We just go around the pillar here as well. I was just looking at this one. This one's great with the actual sort of freeze frame from Laurel Bank, again, just up the road again, or down the road from Croncavarty again. In the early days of the TT, says these great red sign by the side there, motorcycle engines constructed from iron and relied on air cooling. Inevitably, after the sharp ascent through Glen Helen, the machines would often overheat. But then the Rex Motorcycle Company had a solution. Rex persuaded a lady living in a cottage near Laurel Bank, it's another great story this, to leave a pail of water outside for Rex riders to pour over their engines. This was a water-cooled engine in its crudest form. I wonder how they stopped the other non-Rex riders sort of using the bucket.
Yeah, that's a good point. Never thought about that. Yeah, was she guarding the bucket, the lady? With yeah. It's interesting. My mum is actually just out of this shop. My mum is the water thrower. So yeah, and that's, I mean, technically, I was so proud of Ian, the photographer, for capturing that shot, because we only had enough water for 2 takes. So yeah, it's yeah.
To get it freeze frame with the water, just all the droplets just frozen there. Was it warmed water?
It was a wonderfully hot day. So yes, it wasn't warm to start with, but it was, the sun had warmed it up. So yeah, it wasn't actually, it looks more painful than it was. It was actually quite nice.
It's a great picture. You've got to come down and see it. And of course, this exhibition down at the House of Manannan throughout the TT period. You can come and check it out. Do you need special permission to get onto the course to do these pictures? Or do you have to go out at the crack of dawn? Or
crack of dawn.
Yeah.
It's like 4 o'clock in the morning sort of times, before sort of the general public are riding around or driving around. So we keep it pretty low key as possible.
Terrific. And just looking behind, because when I came in, you were working on something a bit different here. So tell us about these works down at the far end of the exhibition here you're working on.
Well, this is TT geekiness to a whole new level. If you think the calendar stories are geeky, these are. I've captured various sounds of various sort of milestone moments in the TT's history. Some of which have been from the Sound Stories record series, which were recorded in the 1960s. So that one there is the sound of Mark Halewood's Honda 6 going through Sulby.
Wow.
And you can actually sort of read the waveform. You can actually see where it accelerates and where it's going flat out by the thickness of the sound form. This is Michael Dunlop's sub 17-minute lap in 2016. This one over here is hot off the press. In fact, it might even still be a bit wet. Is Peter Hickman's outright lap record, fastest ever lap around the TT ever, and that's him going through Ramsey. And you can see when the band go. I mean, you'll know about this because you're a radio man.
Well, I do. Now that you say it, I recognise them as the waveforms. But yes,
yeah.
it didn't strike me instantly until you started telling the story. Now I think, oh, of course, that's what they are.
So yeah, and you can see how you can pretty much pick out the Ramsey hairpin corner, can't you? In that section where he gears right down to 3rd gear.
Yeah.
So, and that's so this is like a suite of Soundwave oil paintings. There's one more to come. Another Hickman. Hickman's going through Kurt Michael. That's being framed as we speak.
And where did the inspiration for these come from?
I honestly don't, I've always painted for a hobby, and I think the first one I did was a classical song, Ave Maria, and then I thought, oh, hang on, we can apply this to something factual about the TT, and actually you can read information from it as well. So I started doing these about 20 years ago, And I don't know I actually don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know where the idea came from. Just that it's a nice excuse to put paint on canvas, which is a nice thing to do, isn't it?
It's a bit different from your sort of your normal stuff with working with the photography. It's actually painting as well, and so you got both in this exhibition.
Yeah, it's nice, and it's nice to see them all lined up, these paintings. So yeah, and it brightens it up a bit, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
So when's the exhibition open?
Saturday.
Lovely, and then it's on throughout
That's
the
if I
TT
finish my
period.
painting.
If you're still finished, yeah, don't touch them in case they're wet.
Yeah. Warning for people who come: wear blue.
We've got your stand at the back of the grandstand.
Yeah, I'm at the grandstand as well. I'm there for the entire TT. Right smack bang behind the grandstand, near the public toilets. But conveniences, you see. If you need a wee, pop in. Don't have a wee in the tent, though. No, don't have a wee in my tent.
Rachel's exhibition, which celebrates the history of the TT on the Isle of Man with these amazing and surreal pictures, is showing until the 25th of June at the House of Manannan. It's absolutely free. It's well worth the visit. Look forward to seeing her again.
Spotlight, brought to you by the Isle of Man Arts Council.
Now, if you're a closet poet and you fancy becoming a published one, listen up. A new project is aiming to celebrate the Isle of Man in verse, in whichever way you please. And submissions are being invited from poets everywhere, whether well-established or new to the art. The project's called Dreich Planet, Isle of Man. To find out more, I spoke to poet and editor of Manx Reflections, Hazel Tier, and fifth Manx bard, Annie Kissack.
Dreich, or as we would say in Manx, dree, is actually a word used generically to describe, well, perhaps all sorts of rather miserable weather, something damp. However, in terms of this poetry call, Dreich is the name of a publishing organisation run by Jack Caradoc in Scotland. And under that Dreich title, they publish all kinds of poetry, which is very well regarded in the poetry world, across the world, really. And Jack contacted David Callan, a well-known Manx poet. He knows David well because David, of course, is a prolific poet and pretty widely published, not just on the island. And Dreich published David's own Manx pamphlet, or chapbook as they call them, Always, a couple of years ago. So Jack asked David whether he thought there would be sufficient interest in the island, sufficient number of poets who would be able to contribute to a Manx version of a new series called Dreich Planet. The first of which came out, I think it was a few months ago. It was called Dreich Planet India. So we go from India to the Isle of Man. So David had a word with me as another poet and with Hazel, and we thought, well, we can find out. Do we have sufficient poets of sufficient quality? And we hope we think we do, and we hope we do. So basically, we're having a call for submissions of poetry. It's not a competition for a Dreich Planet Isle of Man edition.
Terrific. So where do you fit in then, Hazel? Is with your Poetry Society hat on, as it were?
Mainly, although I'm also a poet in my own right, and have been involved in various projects on the island, such as starting the open mic nights. But yes, my David was hoping that we could publicise this project through the Isle of Man Poetry Society, because of course we have plenty of poets in it, and the publication that I edit for the Poetry Society comes out twice a year. It's called Manx Reflections, and so we have put in to the next edition, which comes out in June, a page advert about this project, and we are hoping that the Isle of Man Poetry members will take the opportunity to become involved in this project and send us submissions. Bethany de la Runciman, who is the chairperson of the Poetry Society, has very kindly agreed to collect the submissions in, because they're going to be judged anonymously by David, Annie and myself. So obviously we can't collect them in. So Bethany's going to make them anonymous and then send the submissions to us so that we can, judge them fairly. And so this will all be in Manx Reflections, but it will also be in other places. Annie's done some posters that we hope to get out
Excellent.
soon to libraries and other such institutions, but I think Annie would like to come in maybe and just say where people can also have a contact online if they can't find the information anywhere else. So I shall hand you to Annie.
Okay.
Well, yes. Manx Radio is the first place where we're mentioning this, but we will have posters and whatever out in the sort of libraries. But if anybody is interested in submitting, you can submit up to 3 poems for this project. The full details of how to do that, you could contact me on Annie Kissack Poetry on Facebook page, and I can send you the details of this. And it's not a competition, but like all calls for poetry, there are a number of things you need to bear in mind. Obviously, the poem in some way has to have some sort of connection
To the
with the
island,
Isle of
yes.
Man.
Yes, the Isle of
Otherwise, I'm afraid it's not really fulfilling the remit. There's also length, considerations, 30 lines, no more. That's because the actual books that are produced are A5, quite small. And yeah, so you can find out more about that from me, Annie Kissack Poetry on Facebook. Watch out, generally on Facebook, we're hoping people will pass the message on, send out adverts, not just to people in the Isle of Man Poetry Society. There are many people who are not, even some people who are no longer living on the island, but have certainly got a connection in some way, and we know right, so we hope word will get round. And we've got quite a bit of time, haven't we, Hazel?
Oh yes, we have. The closing date is July the 16th, so that was kind of decided because the Poetry Society publication doesn't come out until mid-June, so it gives people a good month to get their work in. It's all free, there's no entry fee. You just literally submit as you do to other, magazines and things. So that's it really, and it's if you want the information, then we can provide all that, and we aim to be as helpful as possible to get as many people involved as possible, hopefully.
So terrific. So it's an open house then. You don't need to be a member of the society or anything else. You don't need to be a published poet already. It's maybe a chance if you are I was going to say a closet poet, but perhaps someone who doesn't normally sort of push their stuff out. Might be a chance to get something published for the first time ever, maybe, and actually other people see it and read it. With regard to the actual sort of, as you said, obviously the poem or your poetry has to have some connection to the Isle of Man, otherwise it would be a little bit out of place in the one called Dreich Planet, Isle of Man. But the style-wise, there's no particular restrictions. It can be sort of any type of style, or whether it's sort of lighter-hearted or much more from the heart, or sort of a heavier piece. Anything goes.
We'll welcome all edges. And I have to say, when I mentioned Dreich itself means sort of miserable, we're not. I think it might be ironic. You can any mood, any mood, be very welcome.
And when we say connection to the Isle of Man, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to name somewhere and write about it. There have been other projects like that. And also, it doesn't matter if the poem's been published before.
Right, so something, you don't
because
have to write
there have
a new piece.
been other projects where poems about the Isle of Man have been published. But it can be just an inspiration. If you were somewhere on the Isle of Man and it inspired the poem that you wrote, it can be that, loosely speaking, as long as there's some, sort of connection with the island along the line somewhere.
Terrific. Well, it sounds a great idea. It's a chance, as I say, to get your poetry, maybe, if you've got a poem, if you submit it and it's chosen, as you say, then you might get published for the first time if you've never got your poetry out there before, and to a much wider audience. As you heard Annie say, you can send submissions to bethany@manxcat.org.uk. Plenty of time to think about it. 16th of July is the closing date, and remember that there's no more than 30 lines each, but you'll probably see the posters. You can contact Annie, as she said, if you want some more details. Get your thinking caps on, and let's hope we see Dreich Planet, Isle of Man. Do we know, once it's all the submissions are in, do we know what a sort of proposed publication date would be? Would it be something which would come out this year? Would it be next year? Or is that sort of in the lap of the gods?
I think that is in the lap of the gods. However, you will be informed if you've been successful by what date is
31st of August. So we're not giving a definite date. We're not saying you will be informed on blah blah date. It'll be before. If you haven't heard before the 31st of August, then you probably haven't been successful.
Sounds great, doesn't it? Plenty of time to get your creative juices flowing. There's no charge to enter, but do remember that maximum of 30 lines. You can get more details from Annie via Facebook. To finish off today, the second part of our chat with the man who's one of the best-known characters associated with the TT over the years, the inimitable Derry Kissack, the mastermind behind the purple helmets for all those years, and of course commentator for a lot of their madcap antics. Whilst the helmets are officially no more, Derry has immortalised them in print with his new book telling the history of the group and profiling all of its members over the years. And he reminded me that the helmets had been about more than just the bonkers entertainment.
We've done donations for charity and things. And in fact, any proceeds from this book, over and above the costs, are to be split equally between the hospice, Isle of Man Hospice, and the Queen's Pier in Ramsey, like a last gesture of charity work. As Smashy and Nicey would say, there's a lot of work for charity, mate.
Absolutely right. And so it is a wonderful book. We've got a copy in front of us here. Like I said, at speeds approaching 100 miles an hour. It's in hardback, it's in full colour, it's like a proper A4 annual size, and with a lovely hardcover, and we were just saying an amazing wraparound picture which actually starts on the front cover. If you turn the book over in your hands, it goes round the spine and right round to the back cover with all the boys in there on the Hondas, I think, on the bikes, wearing the coats, wearing their world famous helmets, of course, right the way around. A really classic picture, that one. Who took that one? Is that the one on the front cover?
Well, one of the lads, Andy Walton, one of the main men in the helmets, the Great Waldo, we call him. His wife, his lovely wife, took that picture.
That's a brilliant one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I suppose, again, you were saying it was all about fun, a group of guys having a good time, entertaining others as well, often raising thousands for really, really good causes. And as you say, a little parting gesture with the book as well, with the raising money for good causes and that one as well. But it was a mix of sort of complete bonkersness and sort of silliness, but with actually a bit of that daredevil attitude as well all the time.
Hell hath no fury. Oh yes, very much so. It's it's clever really, because I always likened it in the commentary to Les Dawson playing the piano badly, because you had to be very good to make it bad.
Yeah, yep.
Because bad's bad, but this is it's good.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good bad.
You have to know exactly what you're doing in order to make it bad and make sure it's safe as well, of course, I suppose.
Well, safety. We've had lots of broken bones over the years, and I think the kids thought we were indestructible, because when somebody hit the ground, they just laugh. And often it was a broken leg or a collarbone or something like that, but the show must go on. Well, it did do. It did do.
For an awfully long time. And I didn't realise, just flipping through it, Steve Hislop was an early...
Hizzy was one of the original guys, the second wave of us really, and he was a great character. I've still got his coat actually, and it says Hizzy inside it, and I always know which coat it is because he had a battery in his pocket, and the acid ate through the bottom of his coat, through the pocket of his coat, and he lost the battery. So he was some boy, was Hizzy, and he wasn't too sure about Manx beer. So one of the T-shirts is actually named after him, and it says on the back of it, "Ale, it's no as bad as you think," because he was offered a pint of beer, And he said, "Oh, I didn't drink much, you see." So they said, "Try it, Izzy." So he had his mouthful. He says, "Aye, it's not as bad as you think." And that's actually on one of our shirts, which I've envisaged in years to come will be quite collectible.
It'll be a collector's item. And the coats themselves, because they all look identical. Did everyone have their own coat then? Or was
you had to have your own coat because of the smell. In fact,
No answer to that.
There was a good story about the coats one night up at Government House when Ian McFadden was the governor, great friend of ours. He brought Prince William as a young man. I think Prince William was about 20 or 21 maybe, and we did a show for him. Well, I think the picture is in the book actually with William wearing one of our coats. Well, it came about that our guys had been out on the tracks all day through the mud and muck and whatever, and Robbo, one of our great guys who lives in Carnforth actually, he was there with his coat on, a very old coat and a smelly one. In fact, he's known as the polecat for obvious reasons. And I said to Prince William, "I bet you'd like to try on one of these coats, Your Highness." And he said, "Oh, rather." So Robbo, one of the first, most generous of the helmets, whipped his coat off and he swapped coats with the Prince for his blue Savile Row jacket. And not only did the Prince put his coat on, but he put the Prince's coat on. And he rooted through the pockets, and he was heard to say, "There's not much in your pockets, Your Highness." And to which William's security men looked quite anxious at the time. But to no avail. Ian McFadden told me later that when he sat down to lunch, to his evening dinner, he had to sniff his armpits, and with his blue Savile Row jacket. And I don't know whether it ever got burnt afterwards, because he was quite conscious of the polecat effect on his jacket.
Oh dear, you can't make that stuff up, can you?
You cannot. It could only happen here.
And actually, the foreword, who looked at the front of the book there, the foreword is written by the current Lieutenant Governor, also a great fan, Sir John Lorimer.
Indeed, yes. We've made inroads into Government House on many occasions, and in fact, I've probably lost count how many times we performed up there, and it was always top secret. We were never allowed to know who we were going to perform for because of security reasons, and it all had to go through the police and one thing and another, especially when William came. They had security guards everywhere, and it was quite some night actually, and we've had wonderful times with it. And so to initiate the new governor, John Lorimer, we offered him a night's entertainment, and to which he jumped enthusiastically. And I think it was last TT week actually, and we've become great friends ever since.
And he said, you can tell you're a friend here, because he says, a quick word about the author. There is only one Derry Kissack, and for that we should be truly grateful.
I didn't quite know how to take that. It was kind of a negative compliment, wasn't it? Yes.
Oh, wonderful stuff. So, do you miss it already?
Oh, yes. Well, we still meet up as friends, obviously, but we will miss it, and I'm sure the TT fans will find a big hole in the entertainment of the TT when the helmets aren't actually there, because you never know, they may feel a pyramid coming on somewhere in the car park in a pub locally. I don't know. I can't speak for the individuals, but they may just feel a show coming on. I can't promise you that.
You never know. Well, it's a wonderful looking book. Great credit to you. It's coming out. Where can people get their hands on a copy then if they want to get it?
It's in all good bookshops, Bridge Bookshop, Port Eyre, and
rubbish ones as well.
Well, it's at various places. There's mainly in the bookshops, Duke Video, Duke Marketing, the book company in Castle Street. I think Emma has got some at the Talk of the Town, the restaurant. There's some up at the Victory Cafe. In fact, look out for them, because this first batch is going to be sold out in the very near future. But I have to say, Howard, I am proud of it, to be honest.
At speeds approaching 100 miles an hour is available now in all good bookshops and, as they say, some of the rubbish ones. That's about it for this week. Don't forget, if you want to hear anything again, go to manxradio.com, download the Spotlight podcast, listen where and when you want. Why not try it whilst relaxing at the back with a small iced cup of Vimto? See you next week. Look after yourselves, and whatever you're doing, be creative about it. Cheerio.